Welcome everyone to the Sharpe Way. Yes, another amazing Monday, 2 glorious hours, the most important and valuable 2 hours of your entire week. Yes, you have to watch and listen to all 2 hours or you will miss something so super cool that you regret the rest of your life. I'm so lucky. I have the man, the myth, the legend himself, the man in black, the man who is the editor of Reason Magazine and also a columnist at the Daily Beast. Is that right?
You're 0 for 2, Larry.
0 for 2. Okay. I was completely wrong.
I am an editor at large at Reason.com, and Reason TV. So I make content, but I don't call the shots anymore, which is how I like it. And I stopped writing for the Daily Beast around 2016, 2007.
So I'm only off by 4 years.
Yeah, no, that's actually pretty good.
Not too shabby. Yes, yeah. Nick Gillespie, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, too.
Of course. So we chatted recently about many different things, but the thing that I want to bring up, and because you and I actually talked when I ran for governor also, is the difference between the liberty movement and the Libertarian Party. There were the idea, some people call it the big L or small L or something like that, right? The idea of the movement versus the idea of the party. I have a very, I guess, specific way of looking at this that a lot of people disagree with. And that is, I see the libertarian movement as a broad, huge, big thing that can encompass many people and activists and everybody. But the party is the political arm of that movement, and it is a separate piece that has to have separate goals. And I'm a big fan of the party versus the movement. I love the movement also, but I focus on the party.
I'm an admirer of the Libertarian Party, but I think I'm kind of the obverse of you, that my interest ultimately is in the broader liberty movement or libertarian movement in all sorts of ways. And I have grown over the years. I've been at Reason for like 26 years, 27 years, something like that. I joined in late 93. And my interest, I now consider myself a directional or adjectival libertarian. I don't even define that as a noun. It's a kind of predisposition, a temperament, a mindset, a direction. And I just want to see society, however we define it, or the societies that are overlapping that we're all part of, moving in a direction of more individual freedom, more autonomy, more looseness. I'm a big fan of the late 60s counterculture. Let as many freak flags fly as we can kind of, stitch together and get up a flagpole. So I think the Libertarian Party, and I was a big fan of the kind of show in 2016. I know a lot of purists disliked Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. I thought it was pretty great that they tripled the vote total and the percentage total, et cetera.
Absolutely.
They put something on the map. I would like to see more of that.
Sure.
I would like to see more people like you running and more people winning seats and whatever. But mostly I'm, like wherever there is some kind of stuck up clotting of freedom, I want to see things happen. And as a result, I'm into drug legalization partly because I don't like the war on drugs and partly because I believe sincerely in better living through chemistry. So I want more freedom there for people to experiment and try stuff. I want people to have more economic freedom to try new ways of doing business as long as they're not screwing up everybody else's life. I want people to have more social freedoms. And I think
this all sounds good.
Absolutely. I don't think there's a conflict here, but there's maybe a difference in emphasis. And I think
But someone's got to emphasize the party, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, someone's got to run, right, or no?
So why aren't you running then? You are,
It's a great question. No, as you know, I ran in 2018, and I ran in 2016, but 2016 was a very short. It was only about a 1-month campaign that ended up in a loss. The 2018 campaign was a year and a half. It was a year and a half of me with no salary, a year and a half with me just full-time campaigning to make the impact that I'm very proud that I made with all the people who got behind me. I mean, not everyone always gets this, but New York State, you probably know, was ranked 50th, multiple years in a row by Cato as the least free state in the union. And 1 year after getting ballot access, we got 7 victories in this state. So there are 7 people who are labeled libertarian who are elected libertarians in this state from 0, and from 40 years before 0. So that to me is a massive win. It's a big change. Is the world shocked? No, of course not. But is there movement that people can see? 100%.
Yeah,
so,
and that's just in the political arena.
Yes.
I mean, I think when you look at a broad variety of other parts of our lives, there is a lot of growth and a lot of success in terms of expanding the circle or the sphere of liberty and all sorts of activity.
And people are mentioning us now, right?
Yeah.
If you look, I'm not running because if I can't give another year and a half of my life without a salary, then I don't want to run, right? Running for president is a massive undertaking and should not be done part-time. That's a bad idea, right? I'm going to campaign for president on the weekends. That's a bad idea. If you're going to campaign for president, I campaigned only for governor. It was a full-time job. If you're going to campaign for president, it must be a full-time job. Again, it's something that I have a different view even within the party. Most people who are Libertarian Party people, they say we've got to run lots of candidates. We've got to run all the time, get on all the ballots. I am the opposite. Like, no, I don't want 1,000 candidates. I don't. I want a few really good candidates with really big teams. That's what I want. If someone says, well, Larry, I'm going to run because I've heard this constantly. I'm going to run for president because the only person I can trust is me. Stay home, man. Yeah. Stay home. You don't do me any favors. Stay home.
Are you excited about the looking at the field right now? Are you?
No, it's exactly what I don't like. It is 60 some odd people running for president, and most of them, I think almost all of them, are part-timers. So I'm not very happy with it right now. I really would like some full-time people running, more full-time. There are a couple, but I'd like more full-time people running.
Do you have a favorite among the crew?
Not right now. And if I did, I couldn't say it right now. I don't want to be. I don't want to be unfair.
Aren't you a kingmaker?
I hope I'm a kingmaker one day.
Yeah.
And while I'm not a kingmaker now, I am an influencer. I think that's true. I'm an influencer, and I don't want to influence. I want these guys and gals to bust their rump, do the right thing, impress delegates, and see if we get the right person to show up. And
what is
success?
Else. What is success for an LP presidential run?
Let me go back 2 things. First, I want to finish saying that I'm not running because I can't do a year and a half free. When I can do a year and a half free, I'll run again. Until that, I don't want to waste people's time, money, and energy. I raised over $500,000. I mobilized hundreds of people. I'm prepared to do it again if I can make impact. If I can't do that, I'm not going to do it. To the next piece. Yeah, I think I'm an influencer, but there's the most important piece. I might be wrong, right? I accept that I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, and that I might go, oh, this guy or this gal, they're my guy or gal. Maybe I'm wrong, right? So let me let it go as long as I can to see who's going to pop up and be the right people, the right person, before I start saying who I think the right person is.
So what will success look like in 2020 for the LP presidential bid?
I am very clear about it, and I'm very biased. New York State, as you may or may not know, recently changed its ballot access rules. They saw me win and said, oh, we can't have that again. Right, I'm basically the Ross Perot of New York. Right, once you get involved, they got to get rid of you.
Your ears aren't that big, but
that's correct. Yes, we
get that.
But maybe I'll talk about large sucking sounds from Mexico coming up, whatever. So I just dated myself. So in any case, so now New York State this year is going to probably have to get about 160,000 votes.
Wow.
On the Libertarian line. The rule is 2% or 130,000 votes, whichever is larger. The assumption is about 8 million people will vote this time, so I'm actually going to need about 160,000 votes. So victory for me is our presidential candidate getting 160,000 votes in New York State. That's how I define victory. And if they can do that, we won. That's how I define it.
Do you think anybody who's out there right now is capable of doing that?
It doesn't look like it right now.
Yeah.
And it's not because any of the people aren't bad or good. I look at 2 things, and I'm very forward about this. People have asked me, Larry, what are you looking for? I'm looking for someone who can raise a lot of money, and looking for someone who can build a big team. Those 2 things matter more than anything else. Does the person have to be libertarian? Of course. Mm-hmm. If they're not perfect, but they can do those 2 things, I'm actually okay, which will make a lot of people angry, but I don't care. I want ballot access.
Yeah.
I want ballot access so that I can keep getting victories in my state at the local level and getting L's on the board, meaning libertarians on the board, wins on the board in my state. That's what I want. So, if they do that, that's a win. So far, in my view, I look at the Gary Johnson campaign as my measuring stick, right? Gary Johnson got about 175,000 votes in this state. However, he had two lines. He had the independent line and he had a libertarian line. So for just having libertarian line, Gary Johnson raised about $13 million. So I'm saying we need someone who can raise about $15, $16 million. You can raise $15, $16 million and you're libertarian enough, you're my guy or gal. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I know people don't like that, but I have an ulterior motive.
And I realize I'm mining you here for, I got my own podcast to do and my own articles to write, so I want to get as much information out of you that I can appropriate.
Sure, please.
Mix with my labor and my sweat, and then it's my property,
I love
intellectual property.
Just take what I'm taking and put your name on it, and life is good.
I think so. From my perspective.
Perfect.
And we're going to talk about Parasite later.
Oh,
so,
yes.
We can. I think I'm leading into that. But what is the top issue for libertarians in 2020? Because there are a couple things going on that I find kind of fascinating. That the early rumblings. And one is that, we've been getting this basically our entire lives, and I think we're around the same age. We're, somewhere in our mid-20s.
Yeah, I'm late 20s.
Yeah, but we have, we read a lot of history about the 70s and 80s and 90s, but, we're told constantly that this presidential race is the most important of our lives.
Isn't
and we
it
know
always?
this. Yeah, no,
Every time.
but each
Yes.
time, in a way, it seems more people believe that. And certainly with Trump versus Bernie or whoever the Democrat is, I'm around people all the time who are like, I cannot live with another 4 years of Donald Trump, et cetera. So you have that, the apocalypticism, and then, all the Republican types are saying that, if Bernie Sanders, we're all, by the end of Bernie Sanders' first term, we'll be speaking Russian and going to the ballet all the time. And you have that. And then you have, from the Iowa caucuses and elsewhere, a kind of interesting canary in the coal mine, which is that they had lower than expected turnout and lower than in 2016, which to me I see as a win because it's, this panic and this hysteria that comes up every 4 years about we must smite our enemies because they are absolute evil. It's turning more and more people off. And Matt Welch and I wrote in 2011, 2012, the Declaration of Independence, which was a book about libertarian politics and policy. And the starting insight of that book was that fewer and fewer people are calling themselves Democrats or Republicans, and that has continued.
Yeah,
independents
agreed.
are so.
Yep.
I am, in a way, I am looking forward to 2020 because I think the big reveal, and it might not make sense right away, but I'm betting that the big reveal will ultimately be seen as the fact that people aren't buying that you have to be on either, Team Republican, Team Democrat.
I'm unsure. And by the way, if you want to join us in the program and give us a buzz, feel free. You can join us by calling 573-427-5463. Give us a buzz and you can chat and tell us how right or how wrong we are. Well, actually, how right I am. Yeah. But whatever you like, I don't mind. You can be wrong yourself if you want to. I don't mind. So give us a buzz. It's totally fine. I have two pieces of this. One is, is it the most important? And then two is, are people kind of shutting off? The first thing is if they're shutting off, is that a form of learned helplessness, right? Which is now all of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore, so why bother? I think you're seeing that specifically on the left right now, thinking, you know what, Trump's going to be our president anyway, why bother? There's a joke where President Trump, and this is just a joke, I have no idea if it's true, actually doesn't want it to be easy because he actually wants to crush the hopes of Democrats. Like he wants it to be hard because he wants to crush hopes. Now, whether that's true or not, I have no idea. But the point is, I think there are Democrats who are scared that that's true. And that another, let's have some hope and a crush will end the Democratic Party is a concern I think some Democrats have. And then they're like, whatever, why bother? So I think that is happening. But there's something else. This is a very important election. And not because things are going to change so much. They aren't. I mean, whether Trump is president or Bernie's president, the same garbage is going to happen. We're still going to keep marching towards oligarchy. Whether we march on the left road or the right road, it's the same road that goes down to a group of people at top being in charge. It doesn't really matter for us. But there's going to be violence. And that's my worry.
Huh.
There is going, because think about this. If say Trump wins, loses. If Trump loses, the right's going to say it was the deep state. Yeah. It was this. If Trump wins, the left will say it was the Russians. It was the Ukrainians. It's going to be someone who made it illegitimate, regardless of who wins, right? Which means half of our country is going to believe that our president is illegitimate. A bunch of people are going to just shut off and go, forget about it, learn helplessness, and some are going to resort to violence. I'm not saying civil war. I'm not saying that. But I am saying sporadic violence. Yes, people who just can't take it and do something
Do you see that
dumb.
happening now? Because
we literally today had a guy who shot cops in New York City. Well, this week, couple days, sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, is that increasing? Is that decreasing over the past 10, 20 years?
As a general rule, no. I don't think that's true at all. But I think, usually if some guy wants to go off and shoot cops, it's because just he's personally mad at cops for some reason, right? Some cop did something bad. He's mad. He wants to go kill a cop. That does happen, obviously. But this case, it was right after all the anti-cop protests, which, of course, we know that there are copycats. We know that does motivate people.
I'll throw out as an alternative to learned helplessness, and this is I will build on what you were saying. There's the idea that people say, you know what, I'm not going to wait for politics to be in place so that I can force my policy through and make everybody live that way. I'm going to build the community. I'm going to build the world that I want to live in. And I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start a nonprofit. I'm going to start a cult. I don't know, whatever. But like something that is not based on coercion, but is really based on, it's a type of company. It's a type of service. It's a type of network. And I think we see a lot of that. And that, to me, very few people, when they shut off from politics, it's not like they're like, okay, I'm done. Because I think for most people, and this is certainly the world I want to live in, where politics is not the be-all and end-all. It's not the central focus of my identity, of my activity, of my anxiety. It's like, because politics is blood sport. Politics is 50% of the people plus one. Making everybody live a certain way, do things a certain way. And there's places where we need a consensus, but they should be as small and as narrow as possible. And I think that what we see when people start to evacuate politics is they take more parts of their own lives into their own hands.
They come to me. I found that in New York State. So many people that I picked up, they were people who had done what you just said. This sucks. I don't care. I'm going to open my own business, start my own nonprofit, and government kicked their ass.
I agree.
Government kicked their ass, punished them, dropped them, and then when I showed up saying, can we just leave people alone, let people do what you just said, they flocked to me.
Well, this is the problem with that approach, and it's not one of passive resistance or anything, but it is like saying, okay, let's evacuate politics and move into areas of our lives over which we have more control, over which we have more agency and things like that. Part of the problem with the federal government, certainly, and I think this is true at the state and local level as well, is that when you stop, if you ignore government, it doesn't disappear.
Correct.
It just keeps growing. And this is one of the things that is maddening for me about Donald Trump, among many, is that, he came in, even now in his budget, his proposed budget plan, he is being accused widely of cutting all sorts of government, but somehow the top line number increases. He wants to spend, he's spending the federal budget is about $4.4 trillion this year. He wants it to be $4.8 trillion the next. But all you hear out of the news media, they're so dumb about this, is like, oh, he's cutting all sorts of things.
You know what?
And it's like, I don't understand that.
Perfect segue. We want to take a call if we could. There's a caller coming out of New York. He wants to talk about those exact budget cuts. We want to grab, if we can, from New York. We want to grab Luke. Luke, are you there?
Hey, Larry. Yes, I am. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
I'm good. I just had kind of briefly looked at all the stuff that was going on with the budget cuts, and I saw Trump had proposed initially a $4.4 trillion budget cut over the next 10 years. Is that really enough to move the needle, or do you think that the cuts that he even proposed were really realistic or reasonable?
No, I don't think so. And when you look at, he's talking about increasing spending in the next year. And that's the only year that matters in any kind of budget. But also beyond that, if you look at the longer projections, it's trillion-dollar deficits as far as we can see. I mean, this is just, Milton Friedman at one point had said that the true measure of government is not taxation, it's not even regulation, it's what it spends.
Yes,
and if
absolutely.
the government keeps spending more, the government gets bigger. Even if you say, oh, well, it's not in mandatory spending, it's in this, or it's defense spending, and defense is part of the Constitution. In the end, it's just like, in Bill Clinton's last budget, which would have been proposed for 2001, was under $2 trillion. We're more than double that.
Yep.
For what? Yeah. I mean, it's not clear. And, and this is part of what really irks me about the Democrats this time around is this, their new fetish is to say everything has to be a universal right. Everything.
Right.
And
right.
It's like everybody gets college for free. Everybody gets universal basic income. Everybody gets this. And it's like, no, you know what? We're a fucking rich country. And wealthy people, including, relatively wealthy people like myself, I am happy and I should be held to paying for my health care, my retirement, my education, and my kids' education. And I'm happy to provide that. Like, Bismarck could talk about universal welfare benefits. We cannot afford it. No country on the planet can.
Chancellor of Germany in the late 19th century.
Yeah. And, invented kind of or brought online the kind of modern welfare state. And I think we're still in that Bismarckian era where everybody knows that all of this stuff is unsustainable. And they're kind of like, you know what, like there's no way but through. Like, so we're just going to blow it out as opposed to cutting it back. Let me touch a couple of those
things if I could. The first thing is, what you're talking about is critically important, my friend. I'm so glad you said it. The problem is we're talking about cutting. And if you remember when I was running for office, you didn't hear me talk about cutting taxes very much. What I talked about heavily was reducing spending. That was number one.
Absolutely.
And the second I talked about was other ways of raising money. And I actually had a joke. I was saying when Democrats say fund and Republicans say invest, what they mean is more taxes. But they don't say that. They say the idea of having either investing or funding is what they talk about. But that means more taxes. And this is constant. If you look at the State of the Union, if you look at any of the Democrats talking, all they talk about is, and we're going to put X dollars towards this and Y dollars towards that. And everyone stands and claps. Oh my God, you must love us because you're putting X dollars into this and Y dollars into that. You must love us. But no one's saying that someone's got to pay for this.
Yep.
And
so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this then, while I have you on the phone. So my question then is where do we have to cut? And actually, I'm not even sure that it has to be cuts up front. My personal feeling is that we have to start delegating this power and authority back to the municipalities and the states. And that's where I think you'll really start seeing people be held accountable for what they're spending. But these big government issues that we've already created, such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, how do you pare these back, and how do you start to make them manageable where they're going to be sustainable for the short term, and then in the long term we can get rid of them and move towards a society where people take responsibility for themselves.
Well, if I can throw something out there, for most of the 21st century, and it is kind of god-awful that we're already 20 years into this thing, and I feel like we're still stuck somewhere in like the late 80s. But $1 out of $4 for the federal government basically has been borrowed. In the last budget, we had a record high amount of tax revenue or government revenue and a record deficit because, everybody knows rich people who, instead of balancing their books as they make more money, they have more access to credit and they just get further and further in the hole. That's what we have a government by Groupon where, the pitch to the voters is, for 75 cents, we're going to give you $1 of government spending. And you're kind of a schmuck if you're like, oh, yeah, then I want less. I mean, in a way, but there's going to be an accounting at some point. I think that we have to start with the spending issues because taxes, over since the end of World War II, we've never really been able on a sustained level to generate more than about 17%, 18% of GDP as a tax revenue, no matter how we try to jigger the tax code and what we're charging, et cetera.
We still give the same percentage comes in no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, and the top marginal rate can be 90% or it can be 28%. It doesn't matter. And with spending, I mean, I think we really have to kick the entitlement state in the nuts and say, you know what, like if you are a millionaire, if you are a 100,000-aire, you're not going to get Medicare. And we're definitely not going to take Medicare, which is now just for people 65 and older. We're not going to make it Medicare for all or Medicare for all who want it or anything like that, because that's just going to blow out the spending. We need to start shrinking the amount of government spending that automatically gets spent on people. And I will say this because I'm a good decade away from collecting any of this stuff. We start with old age entitlements. When Medicare was passed and Social Security, it's a little bit more complex because that was passed during the Depression. But when people started living longer, old people in the mid-60s that was an indicator. If you were over 65, you were more likely than average to be in poverty. That now it is not that, and it's not simply because you're getting all the free money, but it's because people are living longer and they make more money as they get older and things like that. We got to start paring that back.
There is by the way, for those of you, we dropped a couple phone calls. I apologize, guys. If you want to call back, I know I got people on the line, but if you want to call back, please feel free. Call back. I'm sorry for those that we dropped. 573-427-5463. But to answer your question, there's two important aspects we have to remember. Number one, the government is a massive jobs program. I mean, 1 in 7 Americans somehow work for the government, and those who don't work for the government, they get government contracts all the time. Look, I work in New York City. One of the reasons why I work in New York City is because I get government contracts from New York City. That's one of the reasons why I do it, right? I can train government organizations and make money on trainings, right? So even though I don't work for the government, I'm still getting government contracts. So you find that often. To just say you're going to cut government, what you're actually saying to many Americans is, I'm going to cut your job. That's a problem. So we have to make sure that we accept that government is a massive jobs program. Many libertarians will always say government doesn't make jobs, right? Yes, it does. And if you've got one of those jobs, you know because you're paying your bills for it through it. So it does absolutely create jobs. No question it does. So since with that in mind, we can't just go cut government because then you're cutting jobs. You have to find an alternative, which comes to the second thing I want to bring up. As we added government, we by default removed community. So as we remove government, we must add community. That's how we fix this, by adding community. How do we add community? By changing some of the rules, regulations, licensing to let those entrepreneurs take up that, to let those nonprofits take up that. That will create jobs. That will provide value to where now there's a secondary option. If you remember when I was running, at no point did I ever say, abolish this, abolish that, abolish this. What I always said was, let's create a secondary option that's going to be better so that people can choose either one, let the consumer choose. The government option either becomes better or goes away. Both are the right option, right? Either way, it gets better and then there's more competition, or it goes away. Either one is good. But when you remove and say, get rid of, people become afraid. And people who are afraid make bad decisions.
If I can add a little bit to that and speak to the caller's concerns too, I am not, particularly among libertarians, I'm not a big fan of pushing government back, down to the state and local level and I spent a good chunk of the past 20 years living either full-time or part-time in a small town in Ohio. And the local government there, and every municipality, every locality in Ohio, with 4 or 5 exceptions, charges a local wage tax. That can be as much as like 3 or 4% of every dollar that you make. They're terrible. I mean, they are bad. Ohio is actually a high tax, high regulation state. So, in a way, it's good if you push government's functions to smaller units, it's easier for people to escape them. It might be easier for them to affect the change. But the real thing is that we need to be inspiring a vision of government, which is and it's not even a small government necessarily, but it's an effective government that doesn't make as many choices for the people under its jurisdiction. And I think one of the ways to think about this stuff too is I'm a big fan not of a guaranteed universal basic income, but maybe something like a top off so that, everybody who's below the poverty line, which is a function of income, gets topped off in unrestricted cash grants. Like if we're going to have transfer payments and welfare payments, give it to people in the form of cash that they can spend however they want. And that introduces a concept of autonomy and responsibility. And it allows people who I have known a number of people who, their problem is their car breaks down and they need $250 to fix it.
Yep.
They can never get a loan for that. They can't get a government grant.
Yeah, they can.
So
they can get a payday loan, but the government now stops them from getting payday loans.
Well, it gets complicated really quickly, and then it's like, oh, well, we're not going to pay you $200 to fix your car so you can go to work and keep working and make money and get more skills and get a better job.
Nope.
But we will, when you are unemployed, we will give you unemployment insurance, and you're all screwed up in your head because you've lost your job and you can't provide for yourself or your dependents. Yep. So then we're going to give you some kind of Social Security disability because you have anxiety and you're feeling depressed. And, we'll give you lots more money.
So we'll put you in financial prison.
Yeah.
Or we'll force you to go to Louis the Loan Shark.
Right.
Right? But we won't just let someone give you some money for your car because that's predatory.
Right.
Right? That's predatory. But putting you into a financial prison.
We need a government that trusts individuals more.
Yes.
To kind of make good decisions about their lives. And we don't have that, and it keeps bumping up more and more.
Absolutely. So thank you for your call, my friend. I appreciate it. Did we lose him? Oh, we lost him. Okay. Oh, he dropped. He got bored of us, Nick. See, he was like, these guys are boring. I'm tired.
He must be related to me.
Yeah, he was like, I'm done. We're out of here. All right. I want to grab another call if I can. I'm going to head over to Utah. Head over to Utah. We're going to talk. I think he wants to talk about debates if I can. I'm going to see if I can grab Scott in Utah. Scott, how are you?
Hey, fine. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. What's going on, my friend?
Well, a huge fan of both of y'all's. Got to hang out with you in Salt Lake City, so thank you for that. I do have a really big concern for 2020.
Okay.
Am I coming through clear? There's a little bit of distortion there.
I hear you completely.
Okay, good. Okay. As someone who predominantly supports libertarians, obviously I'm not, I give a blank check to nobody.
Okay.
I'm very concerned that we're going to get to the debates and the televised elements at the national convention, and we're going to get bogged down into this minutia again about driver's licenses and home birth versus the economy and war.
It's those public sidewalks that just get me so upset.
Yes, this is a great question, and it drives me crazy. Literally, I try whenever I can whenever I'm out, and I don't do that much of it anymore because I'm trying to make money for my family, but whenever I'm at an event, I try to be the guy who moderates the debate so that I can show that those questions don't get asked because I control the questions, and then those come in, I just throw out. When we do this, we're trying to test how libertarian someone is. And while there is some value to that, I'm not against the value. The problem is we aren't savvy enough to know how to answer that question, right? I've answered questions like that all the time, but I answer it in a way that says, I like it, but it doesn't mean we have to have it now, right? People ask me about open borders. I say I'm not an open borders libertarian. People say, why? I say, because I don't think we need to have them now. Right now, the country isn't ready for open borders. That drives libertarians nuts. Wait a minute, it has to be open borders. How can you not say that? You're a bad libertarian. All the time people tell me that. And I say, no, I do want the goal of that. I would love to have open borders. And then when people do the opposite, they fight me and say, how can we have open borders? It's impossible. I said, we do have them. Look at the UK. The UK has 4 different countries. They have open borders, and they cross each other, and somehow no one's getting killed. But they also have much more of a common language, much more of a common dollars. I mean, not when they get pounds, right? They don't use the euro; these pounds. So pounds. Right. They have a much more common environment, and I discuss it like that. What we can't do is ask that question. You have 30 seconds to answer. That's not the right way to answer that question. That question is a deep-rooted question. You should understand where someone is. Is that candidate on, open borders is a dumb idea? Are they, it's tomorrow? Are they, it's next week? Let's move towards it. Where are they on that spectrum? So I think you're completely correct. I think the way we do it is by prepping our candidates before they get there to not answer those questions or to insult the person asking them right to their face. I think that's always a good thing. I do that often. I'll just insult the person. I get those questions all the time. I'll just dismiss them. I remember one time someone said to me when I was running my campaign, hey, Larry, your idea of happiness, focusing on happiness is dumb. And I said, okay, great. Why? He said, well, what if someone's happiness is, this is what he said, what if the idea of someone's happiness is killing Jews? I said, who the hell would say that? What kind of person would say that?
He suspect the questioner.
Right. And the question, he said, well, what if they would? And I said, I would dismiss them as I just dismissed you. That's what I told him in front of others. I would dismiss them as I just dismissed you. It's a silly question. It's insane. The people who do that either wouldn't vote for me anyway, or if they would, so what? They have no power. They're crazy anyway. I don't care. It's not a point we want to talk about. So I think we have to help our candidates move forward. And we, as those people watching, have to be upset with the questioners who ask those questions. And I literally, at one event I was at, I booed a questioner. I literally yelled boo because his question was so bad.
Now I'm starting to see why you're not running for president.
There we go.
Because you would be very, you would not survive the gauntlet of.
Actually, I think the reverse. Yeah. I think I'd do very well.
Yeah.
I think I would do very well because I think what most people
you're a
are
paper
looking
tiger.
for.
You got beer. Beer strength here.
I like that. Yes. You don't forget, I spent a year and a half in front of people yelling at me across this state.
Oh, absolutely.
So I saw them yell at me, and they yelled at me all the time. They still yell at me now. If you watch online.
I would like to ask the questioner, what do you think is the biggest kind of issue or area that a libertarian needs to be addressing, if they're running for president right now?
Well, that's what you want to ask the questioner to come up with, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm asking you, like, what is it for you personally?
Well, the biggest issues that the public is going on about, if you're watching any of the major news channels, which is the voters we're trying to reach to, there's a constant stream of discussion about healthcare and education and the environment.
Yes,
agreed. So those are massive issues that people are wanting to get an articulate answer on.
I spent a lot of time when I ran across the state on education. I mean, I would sometimes, I would spend literally an hour just talking about education in one event. I was at, I think it was St. Lawrence College. I literally spoke straight for 4 hours. And out of those 4 hours, at least an hour was just on education. That was a big deal.
It felt like half your interview with Joe Rogan was talking about education.
Absolutely. It's a very big deal. And you know what? You saw I had answers. I was talking about how to fix this stuff, all the problems, right? The one thing I like when it comes to Democrats, I'm not a fan of Yang's UBI. I know you're a bit more of a fan of the UBI. I'm not really a fan of the UBI.
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I am a fan of him actually talking about real problems. He does bring up real stuff. He says, here is the real problem that's happening. So let's try to fix it. So I think if we're looking at real problems, particularly as third party, right? If you're just a regular left-right Democrat Republican, all you have to do is go, I'm not him. I'll protect you from the evil one. Whoever the evil one is, compared to whether you're red or blue state, you just do that and you'll be fine. But if you're a third party, you actually have to motivate people, move them, pull them out of their comfort zone with something that gives them the epiphany, the holy crap, that guy's right. And very often, for me, education would do it. That was a big thing for me.
I think, it's libertarians really kind of created a lot of the solutions to education, K through 12, certainly, that we're seeing in terms of school choice in a multifarious way. And again, this goes to the idea of giving individual citizens, parents and students more options, more control over the money that they're getting from the government. And instead of getting it in some kind of, well, you live in this school district, so you're not going to see the money, but we're going to give this school $13,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 each year for your kid. Instead, even giving the parent half of that and say spend it wherever you want, that produces radical change and a much better experience for everybody
the
involved.
Swedes, who are supposedly socialist, they're all voucher.
Yeah, Vermont itself as
all
a state is giant in vouchers.
They don't even care. If I want to send my kid to a school that's 3 hours away, I can if I want to. It's on me to figure out how to get them there.
I do think one of the questions for libertarians in particular is around environmental issues and about I don't think we have a good and it's not whether it's right or wrong. It's whether or not it's engaging and persuasive. I think a lot of libertarians say,
"Oh, Nick,
global warming is, it's a hoax or it's a fraud or it's like it's not pollution, it's it's wealth or something." And I think we need to
Right.
come up with ways of talking about, do we share values about living, what do you want? Clean water, clean air, a future.
Yeah.
I think most
I
of
have this answer.
Tell me,
okay,
please.
lay it on us.
Okay, I honestly, this has been one of my big ones. And actually, I got this answer by sitting in the studio with Michael Badnarik when he was on NPR in Seattle.
Okay.
And he talked about England, where they have factories that they're told, if you cannot create your product cleanly, you're not allowed to pollute. You're not allowed to produce it.
Okay.
And so I have been saying for years, look, no government or industry or corporation has the right to pollute the lungs of the children downwind. They don't have the right to pollute the soil or the water of the farmers downstream. If you cannot produce your product cleanly, you cannot produce your product. And I have a lot of people who are in the Bernie camp and other camps who are very, very excited about that answer when I give that.
Well, there's two things to remember here. What we're talking about right now is what I talk about all the time, and that is libertarians have to get better at talking to the left. And this is what we're doing right now.
Yes.
That we have to get better at this. The left is our future, right? The country's going left. If we don't bring the left to us, the left is going to drag us with them. So we have to convince them. I don't want to fight the right or fight the left. I want to draw them all to us, right? So we have to do that. And what you're talking about is exactly that. When I talk about the environment, I bring up what I think even more important things. The flaw or the worry I hear with what you're talking about is it says you can't unless. Once that happens, big business will find a way around that. Because they do. They always do, right? That's how they do it. Little business will get crushed because they can't afford whatever the fines are. The fines for polluting the river are $1 million. Bayer doesn't care. DuPont doesn't care. They write the check. I'm out of business. So I get the concept and it feels good, but I want to go someplace even better, and that is, why am I not challenging the private entrepreneur of this world to fix the actual problem? Right? If you actually say, I want to fix the problem, and why don't we allow and encourage the entrepreneurs to fix it? You actually really want to fix this problem overnight? I'm exaggerating, but conceptually overnight. Find a viable way to create meat in the laboratory that people will eat. Done.
Right.
You do that. If you can find a way that can create meat in a laboratory that people will actually eat, that will be nutritious. Now, obviously, I have no idea how to do this, but if you could do that, agriculture basically goes away. For those massive cow farts go away, right? All of a sudden, we're not tearing down a rainforest. You could make a massive dent virtually overnight by just making that one thing happen. Government will never make that happen because the industries are stopping it. There's no innovation. Instead, how about make a prize for the first guy who does that? The first guy who does that gets some awesome prize, something cool. They get some extra intellectual property rights. Oh my God, libertarians are getting mad at me for saying that. But something like that. Insert thing here that makes sense to focus on solve the problem that will defend them against the outside forces, which are all big money, dark money forces, which are making sure we keep it this way so we can keep fighting each other to defend these people against it. And you will watch all of a sudden this get solved. This is the key issue. Well, go ahead.
Yes. I was just going to say, and kind of the original inspiration to call was, Larry, I could talk with you more often. So Nick, this is my only shot for a while. So the question I have kind of goes to what we've been talking about, and there is a massive movement online and otherwise coming from the left.
Yes.
And I see people have warmed to the Ron Paul libertarians. People coming from the right, there's a off ramp built for the Republican Party, but people don't seem to want to build this off ramp from the Democratic Party or coming from the left.
No, so I have it. It's this show. It's this show, my friend. It's literally this show. This is the off ramp. Left, listen, come on in. We're talking about climate change. Left, please come in. I'm right here. This is the off ramp.
It's also, part of this is kind of sociological as much as anything else, and it's just that the libertarian movement grew out of, among other things, the Goldwater campaign in the in '64 and whatnot, and that that set of associations and the sociology of the early libertarian movement was mostly coming from the right and kind of the extreme right, including the John Birch Society. Mm-hmm. And there's a long hangover on that. And I think libertarians do well when they talk about more than simply economic freedom.
Yes.
And we need to be talking about lifestyle freedom and expressive freedom and things and tolerance and the kind of society where there are fewer rules, there are fewer thou shalt nots, and more kind of acceptance and interest and kind of reveling in, the difference that we all kind of have because we're all different people. And I think that was, oddly, Ron Paul in many ways is a rigidly socially conservative person, but I think in 2008 and 2012, a big part of his appeal, particularly to younger people on college campuses, was that he would say in his stump speech, I don't want to run your lives because like in a free society, you get to live however you want, and I think that's an attractive vision of an America that has never really existed, but we're constantly on the verge of actually creating that. And this is one of the things I think that has been good about, all of the time I've been in the kind of libertarian movement is that people are more free to live however the hell they want.
Yes.
And that is a good thing.
Yep.
It's been good for me. It's been good for my kids. It's been good for my ex-wife. Sure. It's like we're all better off because of that. And if we can become more tolerant about that, everything else will fall into place.
And I think
so. How do we get
the left is coming to us? I mean, look, you look at people like Yang, who literally will mention us in his speeches. He'll say things like, if you go back 4 years ago, right, the impact that 2016, 2018 had is clear in 2020. Because you're finding people like Yang as an example saying things like, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians. He's mentioning us now when no one mentioned us 4, 5, 8 years ago. Never happened. Tulsi Gabbard mentions us now. She says Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians. The fringe Democrats mention us. Now, that's not awesome, obviously, but that's a good step. It is a sign that says people are getting it. They're looking at us and going, wait a minute. And that the left is looking at us. The thing I found from my short time, and I say short because only since about 2012 have I really been in Liberty Movement. In the last 8 years, what I've noticed is people come to us from the right easier, but they also go back easier. People come to us from the left harder, but when they come to us, they don't go back. When they make the conversion, it's done. They are in. Many of our most effective, most powerful activists came from the left. Not all, obviously, but many have come from the left. So I'm like, bring the right, bring the left, bring them all over. But I do think we are getting more people from the left. It is happening.
Well, Hillary is more Machiavellian. She would never mention libertarians in a polite conversation. Whereas, and I guess for me, the final question, and I'll hop off and let some other people have some time. We need libertarians to be better at doing press releases, getting a good photograph taken, getting a good website set up.
They need to be better looking. Like they don't all look like Larry Sharpe.
This is the reason why you heard me earlier. If you were listening, I said I am the oddball here in the party. I don't want 1,000 candidates for that exact reason. Right? If you have 1,000 candidates, you can have 1,000 candidates, and 900 of them are gonna suck, and 100 are gonna be decent, and then they can't get the work out of the 900 who are running. Those 900 shouldn't be running. They should be helping the 100 so they can get that better website, get those better headshots, write better things, right? If the thing that I'm most proud of, I'm proud of so many things about my campaign. I'm pumping myself up, but I don't care because I'm pumping my people up more than I am myself.
It's your show, Larry.
It is. It's true. It is the Sharpe way.
If not here, where? When you go home tonight, your family is going to be, Larry, you ran a really good campaign in 2018.
They're going to be like, don't ever run again.
Dad.
No, they're going to be like, Dad, who? No. But what the glory I thought about it is once I was done, I actually built out a farm team. How do I know that? The 7 people who were victorious in New York State all came from my campaign. So I built out a farm team that now was able to make that next step. I agree with you 100%. and I talk the talk because I walk the walk, and I want others to walk the walk too. And what did I do after 2018? I took 2019, and I still crossed the state, and I supported my candidates who are running, and I hope that I helped them to win in some way, shape, or form. I raised money for them. I did press conferences with them because I would show up, and the press would show up because I was the gubernatorial candidate from the last year. Normally, the press wouldn't show up, but I was there. They show up, so now they get some press. I'm agreeing with you completely. If one of the biggest problems the party has is a lack of talent. And one of the reasons why we have lack of talent is because we have a lack of talent. It is a chicken and egg thing, right? When you have more talent, more people come. They come because there's more talent. If we start building out our infrastructure with less candidates, bigger teams, higher quality, exactly what you're talking about, we will get better. My campaign made a bazillion mistakes. We screwed up left and right all the time. And I fired exactly nobody for incompetence because I knew they were learning and they got better. And now there are other people. There are people who are running now who have people from my team on it. Right? They learned through me and now they're better. So I agree 100%. I think the answer is less candidates, bigger teams, patience, and build our farm team.
How do we get your best practices and protocols?
Already happening. I'm telling you, my people are taking it. And by the way, go to LarrySharpe.com. That is literally a policy library. Literally, it is a policy library. Go there. In fact, one of my bigger donors gave me a bunch of money, 5 figures, because he actually wanted me to build out a policy library. And I told him I would, and I did. LarrySharpe.com is a policy library. Just go there. In fact, I do this. If people who notice, I still put stuff out there. If you have a policy idea, my policy team still works. You can come to us. We will help you put the white paper together. We'll publish it on LarrySharpe.com. Now everyone has your policy. So that's how we do it, by creating this policy library. I wanted the party itself to create it. They wouldn't. So I did. So now we have one. Does that make sense?
Well done, you.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
I appreciate both of you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
All righty. So, wow, that was a nice long call.
Yeah.
Let me head on over to Texas if I can. I'm heading over to Texas, trying to cross the country.
I do think that Dennis from Queens has been hanging out longer.
Oh, is that right? All right.
Gregory from Texas.
I'm messing up my team. Team, can we do instead Dennis from Queens? Is that possible? All right, we're gonna do Dennis from Queens. Sorry, Gregory, I got you all excited for nothing. We're gonna do Dennis from Queens. Dennis, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Larry? How you doing, Nick?
Good.
Doing great. What's going on?
All right. So here's my question. You spoke about how libertarians need to do a better job of speaking to the left.
Yes.
Well, I believe that Trump is on the left and he's doing a great job of speaking to the right. Justin Amash called him out on socialism on Twitter a couple of days ago, and I wanted to get your take on that.
Explain what you mean by that. What do you mean Trump is on the left? The average American is going to think you're crazy when you say that. So help me out. Tell me what you mean by that.
All right. Well, I'll use Justin Amash's example from Twitter.
Okay.
Right? So Bill Barr gave a speech in which he said that the United States needs to back 5G companies in order to compete with China.
Okay.
Right.
And so actually, he said we need to take an ownership stake, like a controlling partnership in Nokia and a couple of other European telecom companies.
Okay.
That is 100% correct. And then he parallels this with America will never be a socialist country.
Wow.
So he's figured out how to push socialist policies while saying that he is against socialism. So do libertarians do something like this when they speak with the left?
No, I don't think so at all. Let me give you 2 pieces. One, I don't even want to bring that up as a general rule because Trump bashing is a sport now. People just bash Trump. If you notice, I rarely ever talk bad about Trump. I'll talk bad about policy I don't like, but I rarely try to beat up Trump. Why? Not because I like or don't like him, because it's not effective. I can yell about Trump and call him bad names all day long. It doesn't matter. People who love him are still going to love him. People who hate him already hate him. It's irrelevant. Can I talk about policy? Sure, and I do. And I try to support things when he does things I like, and I try to attack things when he does things that I disagree with. But attacking him personally is basically irrelevant. I think this also is irrelevant to attack him in this way. Because what the two-party system says, and this is what people don't get, it isn't drain the swamp. It's my swamp is better than your swamp. So I would rather have a swamp on the left if I'm a Democrat and get rid of the right swamp, or I'll have a swamp on the right if I'm a Republican instead of having a left swamp. So they actually don't care. This is a Robin Hood situation. The average person doesn't actually care if Trump is doing a bad or good thing, or Bernie, if Bernie's doing a bad or good thing, as long as they're doing it for them, right? It's my king, so it's fine if he crushes his enemies, if he cheats a little bit, if he's bad, it doesn't really matter. So I think I wouldn't touch that as a Democrat or Republican. As a libertarian, I think some libertarians do that, and it's dishonest, and it's going to hurt us in the long run. What I always do, if you and Dennis, you know, you were part of my campaign too. You know that what I always do is I focus on a joint end game so that I'm not lying. We both want the same end game, correct? And the person goes, yes, we both want the same end game. Now let's have a conversation on how to get there. And we can disagree or shift and adjust to get there. And if we disagree enough, my plan's always the same thing. Let's make two of them. Let's make one that's your way and one that's my way. And then let's let the consumer decide which way they want to go. And if they pick your way, I'm wrong. Socialism wins. If they pick my way, I'm right. Market wins. Life is good. But I think that's how we do it. I don't want to mislead anybody, because if they feel misled, I can have somebody angry at me. I can't have them not trust me. So I'd rather have them think I'm wrong or be mad at me than think I'm lying to them and not trustworthy. Did I?
Yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Now let me
hold on. Let Nick talk. Let Nick say something. Go ahead.
Oh well, I was going to say I agree with you, Larry, in the sense that libertarians, you know, if you get too strategic and coy in your messaging, you know, we're trying to build, you know, relationships here. We're not in the end stages of managing people and kind of diverting them from what they think we are to something else. So I think in that case, it's bad to mislead people. I don't think that's what Justin Amash is doing, or what the caller is talking about. When, you know, and this goes back to the idea that Trump is talking about social. You know, you've got to vote for me, no matter how much, whether you like me or not, because the other guys are socialists and they're really bad. But I'm also going to increase the size, scope, and spending of government and the ability of government to control many aspects of your life. You know, that's a version of socialism as well.
Sure.
And I think that one of the problems with libertarian rhetoric, and I like your emphasis on saying, okay, what are the end states that we want to reach? This is mine. Please join me. I think it's a better end state. You know, a typical line for libertarians was always that, well, you know, there's really not a dime's worth of difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. And, you know, when it's George Bush versus Al Gore in 2000, that's pretty true. If you go back and look at their platforms, they were essentially, you know, they were in the same section of the parking lot of the same ballpark.
Right.
John Kerry and George W. Bush, also pretty similar. When you start to get to Bernie and Trump, I think on a deep level they're very similar, or, you know, they're cousins, but the rhetoric and everything around them, it makes it harder for libertarians to really convince people who don't already agree with them to say there is no difference between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Yeah. And we need to be more kind of open-ended about what we want to do. I want to also just add to the caller on the board here that says the topic of what you wanted to talk about, it was the Overton window, you know, which is the idea of like what is possible in policy in the near term. You know, that's what the Overton window, and you want to try and open it, broaden it, shift it. One of the ways to do that is through an open and honest discussion about stuff. And this is where I find in drug policy and in ending the drug war, which has been going, you know, something that's been going on at least since it was launched in its modern iteration in the early 70s by Richard Nixon. It's happening. And, you know, the way that happens is by hammering away at why drug prohibition is bad.
Sure.
Why it corrupts this. It costs too much. The benefits don't come close to covering the costs. It shrinks people's autonomy to change, literally or figuratively change their minds.
Sure.
Those arguments, it takes time to sink in, but it really shifts the Overton window to a point now where in 2016, both Bernie Sanders, who was the last Democrat standing against Hillary Clinton, said, he was like, pot should be legal everywhere. All of the Democratic candidates, with the possible exception of Joe Biden, I believe that. Donald Trump said in 2016, if Congress gives me a bill legalizing marijuana or sending it back to the states, I'll sign it. You know, that has been won.
Yes.
And that's been won through direct, honest, good faith attempts to explain why drug freedom is better than drug prohibition. And that's kind of a model for a lot of different policy projects.
Was that good, Dennis?
Yeah, I think that's great. You actually answered a few other questions for me, but I'll jump off so someone else can get on.
Excellent. All right. Dennis, thank you so much.
All right, bye.
All righty, good. All right. I want to head over to someone who actually called earlier. I want to get him back if I can. I got Max in New Hampshire. He called earlier. We got dropped. So, Max, I'm very happy that you came back. Max, how are you?
Terrific. How have you been?
I'm doing great. Talk to me.
So I'm sharing your show on Urban Libertarians.
Thank you.
Which is a Facebook group, or I should say Facebook page. But I wanted to talk about the Libertarian presidential primary because there's been some discussion.
Okay.
Discussion online about what does it do? Is it even worthwhile? And actually, there's every time we have an active presidential primary, we get a big boost in membership. But all of the candidates, Soraya Foss, Ken Namrob, Dan Berman, they all need contributions. They all need donations in order to be able to afford paying for travel to different states, different conventions.
Absolutely.
So each of them reach different. I think Ron Paul said there are 11 different kinds of libertarians. Now as a Republican legislator, there are 4 different kinds of Republicans: the social conservative, defense conservative, the economic conservative, and constitutional conservatives like Ron Paul. And I think that I think that having more active coverage of all of the candidates, self-included, does a lot to reach a much larger base of voters and gets a lot more people interested in the party.
This is exactly, Max, exactly what I was talking about. You've hit it nail on the head. Is that what I was talking about when it comes to the candidate that I want to support? Right? If you're going to be able to do that, you have to be able to do 2 things. 1, you've got to be able to raise money. 2, you've got to be able to build a team. If you can't raise money or build a team, you're never going to get exactly what you're talking about, right? And I know the issue is, well, Larry, how can we raise money if we can't raise money? I get it completely. And look, when I did it, I wrote myself a check for $10,000. That's how I started my campaign. And then I said I'd put my own money in. You next, right? I did my bet on my bit. Now you next. And I went out and I raised money and I built a team. It's not easy. It's brutal. But if you can't do that, and this is a critical piece here, remember, the odds of us winning this year are slim. I get that. I'm not fooling myself into thinking we're going to all of us win the presidency. Obviously, it could happen. I hope it does. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. But the reality of it is the odds of us winning this one are slim. But the odds of us winning something local is not. We are winning local. And when you win local, you then have to have staff. If you can't build a team, then you can't have staff, which means you can't govern effectively as a libertarian, which means you can't let the people know that when libertarians work in government, the world doesn't end. So you can't get more libertarians in. So I'm with you, Max. I think they all need to have more, but they can't just have more by saying, hey, libertarian media, please support us. That's preaching to the choir. I don't want to preach to the choir. I want to make sure that I'm out there talking to other people, raising money through other. When I raised the $500,000, my average donation was somewhere between $85 and $100 was my average overall donation. I didn't use the big heavy hitter donors to pack up all my coffers. I did them too. I bugged everybody, so I bugged them also. But most of my stuff was from people who were actually new donors. People who had never donated to a libertarian in the past at all. I opened up a donor base that, by the way, still gives. My campaign still takes in money so I can travel across the state and support other candidates. They still do it so I can keep pumping up and helping out New York. So I'm with you, Max. And 100%. Are we on the same page or no? I'm not sure.
100%. Well, I've been elected and reelected to the Budget Committee. I've been elected and reelected to Planning Board. I've been elected and reelected to State Legislature. And all of those races take money. Some of them don't take a lot of money. Planning Board race,
sure,
$100 or $200 or something. But
absolutely,
those legislatures are expensive. And I'm amazed. I haven't even announced re-election for State Legislature, and I've raised more money just from money randomly coming in from nowhere, just out of nowhere, that I didn't even ask for.
Well, people want to be part of something big here, Max. They think you're part of something bigger. They jump on board. I get it.
But for each of the candidates, it's a good $500 or $600 per state convention. It's really hard for us to get out there, and if people really want to help grow the Libertarian Party and the Liberty Movement, get on board and help the Libertarian presidential campaigns.
There we go. Thank you, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Have a good one. And you want to make a comment on that at all?
My only question about New Hampshire is when are they going to get rid of their liquor laws?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they've got bad liquor laws.
There we go. Okay.
We did get rid of a signage rule this year.
All right.
There we go.
Good.
All right.
Keep going. Keep going.
Thanks, Max.
Break on through to the other side.
All righty.
Live for United States.
All right. We're going to head over to Ohio. We're going to talk about billionaires. I like talking about billionaires. Hopefully one day we'll both be billionaires. Are you a billionaire yet?
Yeah, well, for me, the only way to make that happen is through hyperinflation. So it might be good for me, but
nobody else.
Not, yeah.
Gotcha.
Or it'll be equally bad for everyone.
So we'll talk to Andrew. Andrew, how are you?
How are you doing? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Talk to me, my friend.
I'm great. I appreciate it. I just found the show. I'm a libertarian, and I feel politically homeless right now in this country.
I got you, brother. I'm right here for you.
I found you guys.
Yes, absolutely. I got you.
I just want to hit on a few points.
Okay.
Bernie Sanders keeps bringing up this statistic that the three richest individuals, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Jeff Bezos, have more wealth than the bottom 50% of the population.
Yep.
Which is like 160 million people. But there's nothing wrong with that, because think about what Jeff Bezos has done. He controls 49% of all online sales. He controls 5% of the retail. Just think of all the employees, 798,000 employees, and 2/3 of Americans have bought something on Amazon.
So are you saying that because he has those employees and because people have bought his products, that by default that's a good thing?
Yes.
I'm not sure that's true. I'm not sure. I don't think it's a bad thing either. I mean, if Jeff Bezos didn't have Amazon, it doesn't mean that someone else wouldn't have created something similar, or that there wouldn't be 2 or 3 things or 10 things that are still giving people some type of value. I don't know if I can, by default, say that's a good or a bad thing.
I will go so far as to say that one of the lines of attack that people like Bernie, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Robert, Clinton's Robert Reich,
yes, he's horrible.
who is always, there's no such thing as a billionaire who made money by doing something good. You
never.
Take it by
Always
cheating
evil.
people, expropriating
Yes.
the government, etc. And
Yes.
I think people like Bezos. I think people like Bill Gates. I think people like Oprah Winfrey. Paul McCartney, J.K. Rowling. I mean, the list, when you start to look at billionaires, and unless you're talking about oligarchs in horrible countries that are squeezing money out of people and then shipping it to a Cayman Islands bank account or a Swiss bank account, by and large, what billionaires get that way by giving people something they want at a price that they really like. And I think this is where Bezos, there would be other things out there, or maybe, and also there are more things out there. I mean, he inspired the guys who created Jet.com, which was bought by Walmart and which is now revolutionizing the Amazon revolution of online retail. By and large, when we start, if you're talking about billionaires, and we really do have to talk about Parasite. I think at this because, but if you're talking about billionaires and you're talking about people under the poverty line, like you are living in a dream world where you don't want to actually deal with reality. You want to look at the extremes of an income distribution that are atypical. But the fact is that most billionaires, and maybe this isn't true of 100,000-aires, and it's might not be true of millionaires, but as most of them get that way by doing something, giving people something they want at a price that they're very happy with.
But the other thing is, is a person happier because they make money or not, right? I don't think money allows you to have more opportunities. Don't get me wrong. It gives you more options. But, the poor in many countries are still better off than poor in other countries. And as a general rule, the poor are better off across the globe in general. But I guess my point was, I don't think Jeff Bezos is good or bad. He's fine. I'm not mad at him.
Yeah, but
I'm also not mad at him.
But that's also not really the question, because when Sanders, AOC, whoever starts attacking billionaires, they are saying that these people are pure evil.
Yes, correct.
And that
I disagree
and that
completely.
capitalism is fundamentally flawed because it allows somebody, Bernie Sanders will say nobody needs $1 billion.
Yes.
This is a guy who says you don't need that many breakfast cereals, you don't need that many kinds of shoes.
Yes.
When is he going to get to the point, which if you follow his logic, you don't need that many genders, you don't need that many kind of sexual lifestyles,
Sure.
because you know what, aren't two types good enough?
Eventually
Vanilla
he
and
gets
chocolate.
there.
Why
Yep.
do you, and that to me is one of the things that needs to be teased out of a lot of the kind of neo-socialism,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's really ultimately it's a war on individual choice.
Yes.
It isn't like if, Larry, my sexual preferences don't take anything away from yours. They don't threaten yours any more than me wanting, like 36 flavors of ice cream. And you think, no, vanilla is the best goddamn ice cream flavor. Right. Why would anybody need more than that? Or, okay, well, I'll give you chocolate and strawberry too.
That's it.
You can have the Neapolitan square. And that's it. Right. And it's just like it's an insanity and a mania to control people's lives
Yes.
and choices and minds ultimately. So I think that the caller raises a good point when you're demonizing billionaires.
Yeah.
It's like you are trying to get away from the basic question of like, how do we make this country better off, and how do we make people have more options in their lives so they can be happy or not, but on their own terms.
100%. It's demonizing to find a boogeyman. So I'm sorry. Keep going, my friend. We didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh yeah, go. Yeah, but just think they're such hypocrites. Sorry, I'm getting a little feedback in the phone, but just think only 48,000 computers were sold in 1977. But when Bill Gates took over, now we have 2 billion computers in the world.
Yep.
And Microsoft Windows runs 77% of those global computers. So they'll complain about the billionaires, but they'll buy the Xbox games. They'll buy the Microsoft computer. 2/3 of Americans will buy something on Amazon.
Yep.
And like with Warren Buffett, they'll buy the Duracell batteries. They'll buy the Geico insurance. They'll go to Dairy Queen, but they'll complain. They'll still complain.
Yes, absolutely.
I do think, where there are legit, I suspect we all agree on this, that there, when billionaires start to use, or any businessman, any local interest starts using the government to game the system or to rig the system and say, look, I've created a lot of wealth. I've created a lot of jobs here. Give me money. Give my businesses monies, tax breaks, subsidies. Or
solidify my monopoly.
Yeah, exactly.
Solidify my monopoly through regulation to ensure no one can ever knock me down.
And oftentimes this happens where it's, they'll be like, this happened, and in a really interesting kind of version of this just 2 years ago, Facebook, was called before Congress, and Mark Zuckerberg said, I think it's time for Facebook, for social media to be regulated. I would be happy to help write those regulations because I know my business. And the way congressmen and senators talked to him, it was like, it's clear they didn't know what Facebook was. They had no idea. So you would give it to him. And he actually at one point openly said in a congressional hearing, you do realize, like, if we regulate it, there won't be another Facebook.
Yes.
And are you okay with that? And they were like, yes, we're okay with that. So it's, that.
So it's actually not about breaking up monopoly. It's about government control.
That's right.
Right. As long as the government can control Facebook, they're fine with the monopoly. Right. But just as long as they can control it.
This is, they're like the mob. When you see The Godfather and Don Corleone is saying, I don't want to be in drugs. That's bad. We'll just stick with prostitution and loan sharking and blowing people up or something, and murder for hire. But the drug stuff is really bad. You realize, and that was a lie. The mafia got into drugs as quickly as they could, and it's like they don't care, and the government doesn't care what they're doing as long as they get the patina or the sense of control over their stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we can talk more if you want, but
let me grab someone else on the call. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, I'll call tomorrow.
I'll be back every Monday. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right.
All right, good. Excellent. So I'm going all the way across country here, heading over to California. Going to deal with Nicholas from California. Nicholas, how are you? Nicholas, do I have you or no?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. You are the Verizon guy. Oh, now the Sprint guy. Go ahead.
So much respect for you, and my general thing is the environment and the government role versus like private and nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say I favor free market environmentalism, and I, like you touched on, innovation is our solution.
Yes,
Mhm.
I
absolutely.
worry about aggressive regulation and the consolidation of industry if there's a quick transition in the marketplace. But getting to the real question, I'd say the issue with the current climate hysteria is the solutions put forth by the Washington establishment, like the carbon tax and cap and trade.
Yep.
So I want to know your general opinion on that. And I personally think it'll outsource industry to countries with lax environmental protection laws, such as China. But I'm sure you have a strong opinion, and I'd love to hear it.
Well, yeah, as a general rule, I'm not a fan of carbon tax. And there are a couple reasons why I'm not a fan. The first one is it will, by default, create a market, an actual stock market of trading carbon tax, right? Credits. It will create a stock market of carbon credits, which means big business will get it, small business won't. They'll start trading it. It'll ensure that oligarchies win and the small guys lose. So off the bat, that will happen. Small guys will trade their stuff away to ensure they can't do it. And only big business will have it, and it will change nothing because the top will get all the credits. But the second piece of that is, where's the money go? Who says the money is going to what is good or what is bad or what isn't good? And then now you're going to have, what they call the rent seekers, people showing up now. It's going to create an industry of those who help the environment. They're basically trying to get government contracts now. So now there'll be government contracts to get that. There was a I guess a kind of a scandal where Al Gore was getting carbon taxes going to his own company. So he basically was paying his own company for a carbon tax. So why not keep polluting? I'm just putting more money back into my company that supposedly gets rid of these things. But the worst thing is, it assumes that that's the answer. The answer is we have to continue using the same technology again and again and again. And we find that in the EPA, right? There are problems in the EPA. The EPA was written, the EPA rules were written literally decades ago. So now when all of a sudden there's some spill someplace in upstate New York, well, the first thing is the Superfund has to kick in. Well, the Superfund has no money. So now there's no money in it. So no one can clean it up. Well, the amount of money it would take to clean it up to follow EPA standards is impossible because the technology used and supposedly in EPA doesn't exist anymore. They don't make it. So you literally have to go to some undeveloped country, some local warlord, buy back the equipment he bought from us 30 years ago, use that equipment then to clean up this site, and then it would follow the EPA standards. Well, that would cost $1 gazillion. So no one's going to do it. So what happens? We have horrible sites throughout New York State that no one cleans up. So I'm not a fan of carbon tax. I'm not a fan of the government regulating. I'm a fan instead, believe it or not, of just insurance. I know that sounds crazy, but just insurance and innovation. Insurance that says you now have to have multiple standards, insurance standards, industry standards, local standards to build a certain thing, to create something, whether that's a factory or a manufacturing plant or whatever you're doing that might pollute something. If you follow those standards, you'll get insurance. If you don't follow those standards, you don't get insurance. Who will set the standards? The insurance company industry will set the standards, which means they will adjust. Remember, regulations only change when corporate lobbyists change them. But standards, industry standards, change as technology changes. So there will be newer technologies written into these new standards. Why? Insurance companies should be 100% responsible to clean it up. If that's the case, there'll be no insurance. They can't build. This kind of goes back to what the first caller said about this, saying you can't build if it's going to hurt someone. I would just say you can't build if you can't get insurance. And then you're done. As long as you can get insurance, build away. Because when you destroy something, insurance has to pay 100%. So I'd rather go that route than go through carbon tax. Nick, I'm sorry, I'm sure you have an opinion.
Now I was listening to what you were saying, and among other things, I like the idea of having these conversations. So rather than just saying there is, you are an idiot to be concerned about clean air, clean water, a viable environment. So, and I think having more discussions about this, it's clear that, we are producing much more with much less. I mean, that's modernity. And all environmental indicators were getting better, in the decades before the EPA was created. And sometimes they've continued to get better. Other times they've kind of flattened because of some of the things you were talking about. And we need to be thinking about, and having a basic conversation, because there is a global commons and there is a national commons of pollution and, externalities being kicked into the environment.
Yes.
That are hard to track and hard to follow. And like, what do we want on that? And do we want perfectly clean air and perfectly clean water with nothing in it that will be impossible to reach, and trying to get there will destroy the economy? Or do we want to move towards a common goal and use better technology and better methods of paying for stuff in order to achieve that? And I think, as long as we share a goal, we can work towards it.
Absolutely. Look, if you demand perfection, you will get deception. That's just, I teach that in business all the time, right? If you demand perfection, you get deception. Same thing. If you demand perfect air, they'll just lie.
Right.
If you demand perfect water, they'll just lie. So you're not going to get perfect, but they're going to have water and air anyway. So just going to lie to you instead, because nobody wants to go to jail or pay the fees or pay the fines. They'll just lie. So, Nicholas, did that answer your question or no?
It did. Very well put by both of you. I appreciate the call, but real quick, if you could just touch on free trade versus protectionism, like preserving American jobs with NAFTA, TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the current USMCA. I'm sure I could find it all over the internet, but if you could just touch on that real quick.
Sure. Go ahead.
I am a libertarian who believes in trade deals, and I realize this puts me on the outs with people like Ron Paul and Donald Trump. Not that he's libertarian, but I think free trade agreements tend to be better than not. Obviously the best agreements are ones that don't even have to be written down, because people are just trading openly across borders and things like that. Having said that, when you look at the EU, which obviously has many problems and is starting to fall apart, a couple decades into its kind of growth, but it's a good thing to say, in North America, Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. should have basically free trade. We don't, and we don't after the USCMA or anything. But, more trade is better than worse trade. And you can call it managed trade, but it beats the alternative, which was more protectionism. We have actually globally realized most of the gains from lowering tariffs. The general level of tariffs now is a fraction of what it was right after World War II, and that's all good. Everybody agrees that has helped raise the third world or the developing world out of poverty to a point where now half of the people on the planet live at the middle class level or higher, according to Brookings and the UN. That's all great, and that's because of more free trade or moving in the direction of free trade. So I think that's all good. It's a lie to say if we had more protectionism, we would have more American jobs. And this is something that I think Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are very similar on. They keep missing the point that every analysis shows that the majority of jobs that have gone away in America have gone away because of automation, not because of trade. So you can demonize the Chinese, you can demonize people in the Southern Hemisphere, and you're just full of it. And you can put up as many beautiful trade barriers and trade walls and all of that, and walls to keep immigrants out, and it's not going to keep American jobs here. Absolutely. American jobs we have to understand that change is the only constant, and how do you keep an economy that is vibrant and resilient, and how do you keep people training and changing so that, for God's sake, I am old enough to be very glad that the work environment now is very different than it looked when I was 21.
Yes,
and I know I have one or two major clicks on the wheel of fortune to go before I'm able to retire. But that's the way forward. You can't freeze time.
Yeah. I think we're in a similar place. I'm okay with trade deals for one important reason is I want a trade deal that actually regulates. What I mean by regulate is makes things regular, right? That we make agreements that say, a pound is a pound, a dollar is a dollar, and what our dollar equals compared to your whatever equals that. Not just that, what's timing, what's acceptable, how do we sue each other, right? What's intellectual property laws and rules and regulations. So if the trade deal is made to regulate, meaning to make regular the trade, I have no problem with it, as long as we're saying we're agreeing that a pound is a pound, or whatever that thing is. Totally happy with that. I want as low tariffs as possible. Now, in one way, I think people think I'm crazy when I say I'm okay if we lower our tariffs and they don't lower theirs.
Right.
I really am, right? I'm a Star Trek fan. I bring up the Star Trek thing all the time. Captain Kirk says, if you when he's getting ready to attack go after the bad guy in one episode, in one of the movies, he said, the guy says, raise his shields. He goes, don't raise your shields. And this is the first time the Enterprise doesn't get attacked. Every other ship that goes towards this alien raises its shield. The enemy thinks, oh, you're going to fight, so it blows the ship up. Well, Captain Kirk says, keep the shields down. The enemy goes, oh, okay, you're not fighting, and they talk. So the idea, and I use this when I'm training in business, if you want to bring someone else's emotional barriers down, bring yours down first. Very often they'll bring theirs down. I think it works with trade too. Bring your tariffs down first. Very often they'll bring theirs down, because here's what winds up happening. If we bring our tariffs down first, they'll enjoy that trade. And then when we say, bring yours down, and they say no, we go, we'll stop trading. They go, we were kidding. And they'll bring theirs down too, right? So we're giving them an incentive to bring theirs down also. I'm about bringing down tariffs as low as we can possibly bring them realistically, and I don't mind deals at all as long as they're making it regular and we're understanding what that means. Did that answer your question?
Yep, it does. I just like to say again, I appreciate both of you so much for taking the time. I have so much respect, and I wish you the best going forward.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, my friend.
Very nice.
And by the way, if you want to join a program, you can still 573-427-5463. Give us a buzz. You want to talk about Parasite, though. So let me hold off our calls for a second. Please call in. It's fine. Just for a second, we're talking about Parasite. I mean, won the Best Picture, and there was some controversy because it won, was it Best Foreign Language Film?
It won both Best Foreign Language and Best Picture.
And people were upset because if it's an American film, it can't get both.
That's right.
So they were upset. They thought they were cheating. It's not fair.
Yeah, of course. You know, coming in, they probably paid their actors less because it's an Asian country, et cetera. I found it, we are going through a period now, I think, in American culture where class warfare is being talked about openly.
All the time.
I don't have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. I grew up lower middle class. I was born in Brooklyn. I grew up in New Jersey. And I think for a long time, people have just kind of willed away the idea that, that people who come out of a lower income situation, that they're lazier, they're comfortable with their lot in life, et cetera. And there's a lot of anger and a lot of rage and a lot of resentment, some of which is legitimate because some people work really hard but don't do very well in the system. And then there are people who, don't work very hard, but because of the circumstances of their birth, they don't really feel that.
Sure.
And I think a movie like Parasite, partly because it's in Korea, so it's like far enough away where you can kind of look at it and be like, oh, I see what's going on. The dynamic where if it's set in America, it becomes you're starting to project all of your personal stuff on it. And I thought it was an interesting kind of discussion of how people experience their place, their class in a society. For
those of you who don't know, I won't give the movie away, but I'll give you some details just to make you understand it if you haven't seen it. It's basically about what you would consider a lower class. It's a comedy/drama. So they basically make a lower class or poor Korean family, to take a stereotype of that. The stereotype poor Korean family in a city, and who can't get jobs, can't get work, are scammers, they're trying to scam people, and they happen to come across a very wealthy family, and they basically scam the wealthy family. I don't want to give you the details of it, but that's basically what happens, and at the end, there is some violence. That's all I'll say.
No, which is fantastic.
At the end, there is some violence.
And revelatory about different people's interests. There are actually two poor families that also... in a very Marxist kind of way, are pitted against each other because they're both trying to get more out of the wealthy family. And this is,
there's another piece here that many people didn't get. There were parts of the family. I don't want to give much of it away, but there were a couple people in each family who, even though they feel like they're being oppressed by the rich family, still in a certain way worship and respect them as being awesome and amazing and great. And the rich family, in certain part, the patriarch is like, yes, I am that awesome. I really am. And there's a line that you don't need to be crossing here because, I am that cool. That's how it comes across.
Everybody at every level is humanized in it. You can understand why they act the way they do, which is kind of amazing. And then there is a kind of interest in people shifting from one group to another, et cetera. I want what the rich people have. Some of the things the rich people look at the other people and are like, wow, that they're more authentic. They have more real feelings and things like that. They're not dulled by being well off and things. And it's, I find it good because I find it compelling. First off, because it is funny and dark at the same time.
It is.
And it gives you a stronger sense of people who you may not identify with, which is always good. That's one of the things that's great about art, is that it allows you to occupy or to have an experience which is not your own.
And you can also, in the movie, I thought, is many parts during the movie, I felt sorry for everyone.
Yeah.
And felt like a little disgust or anger towards everyone.
Yeah.
Like I felt both, right?
Yeah.
I felt, oh, that's terrible. And then I thought, oh, it's so sad. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, that's so sad.
How could you do that? Yeah.
Yes, I felt all of those.
And, I think one of the things that is interesting in an American context is that I think there are a lot of class grifters in politics who are claiming that we live in a world that, I don't know, it's the equivalent of Tsarist Russia or something. And that, the fact of the matter is when you look at the rates of mobility from one income quintile to the next, for all of the talk about, things are worse now than ever. And, and again, people like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren constantly are hitting these notes of that, the whole system is rigged. And Donald Trump says this in his own way, that the system is rigged and you can't get ahead. Like if you aren't born into privilege, you can't get there. So elect me, and then I'm going to blow everything up and kind of level everything. And that's wrong. And we need to have a conversation about what is the reality of class mobility in America? What are the habits of mind? What are the opportunities? What are the social programs, as well as kind of cultural attitudes and values that we need to inculcate in people?
There's a difference here, though, that didn't exist before, and this is the nouveau riche, right? The idea that, think about it. Some of the wealthiest people in our country are Kardashians.
Right.
Right? And they were basically, two things that are funny, right? The first thing is they are of an upper class, right? Kim Kardashian became famous because she was Paris Hilton's friend.
Right.
Right. So that happened. But they've done some very low class things.
Sure.
Right? And somehow they explode still, right? And you find the rapper culture, right? That was as low class as someone could possibly imagine, right? Thugs and street.
Jay-Z or Eminem. These are people who...
They're up. Eminem was, It was Trailer Park, right?
Yeah.
And then boom, up to the top, right? So I think you do find the advantage to the American society more than I think you find in many other societies is very often dollars makes your class okay.
Well, and
whatever
also,
your class might have been.
And this is, one of, again, thinking about going back to, kind of post-World War II, which is when kind of contemporary America really takes form. Things are a lot looser, than they've ever been. And, where it's, my parents were the children of immigrants here. They were raised in New York and Connecticut in the 20s. And 30s, fought in World War II, this type of thing. And it was harder for them in the 50s to change where they were.
Right.
Even as there was a massive boom in the economy and stuff, the social codes, the cultural codes were much tighter. It's a lot looser now, and that's a good thing. And we need to talk. For me, that's one of the reasons why I'm a libertarian and why I like capitalism, is I feel it creates a more fluid and a system, a cultural system, an economic system, a political system that allows more people to kind of define who they are and succeed on their own
I
terms.
think that was part in Parasite, though, right? They had to create fake paperwork.
Yeah.
Right? They had to say they were certain people, right? They literally said, just lie, just act,
Right. Yeah,
just
no, they
do
have
this.
fake documents to say they went to this school or that
because
school.
that school mattered,
Right.
right? That's what mattered.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. And that still does exist in America.
Absolutely.
Of course it does. Not to that level, obviously,
Right.
right? But but there was something else. You have a situation to where you're supposed to fit in certain things, right? If you were Jewish, you were supposed to become a lawyer. That was your doctor. That was your way to get out, right? Now you find it for many Indian communities, right? Many of them are doctors, or in a medical community. It's kind of what we expect them to be.
Right.
And if they're that, then they can be upper class because they're that thing that society has decided they're okay. I think you find that still to this day. Not as bad as in Korea, obviously, but I think you still find it.
Oh,
if you're
absolutely.
black, you're an entertainer or you're a sports legend, right? Not as much, but I think you still find that's kind of what we expect people to fit. So even though it's not class, it's still there's class there.
There are and class is not simply about the amount of money. It's a wide variety of attitudes and kind of accoutrement that define you as high class or low class, etc. And
I tell this story about when I got my first gig as a trainer in investment banking. My first gig, I've been starting my business about 3 years or so, and I got a gig in retail banking, and then I went to do investment banking, which for those you don't know is a big difference in dollar value. I didn't know that. I was ignorant to how much of a big deal it was, but this is probably 2007, give or take, which if you remember the economy, they were throwing money at everybody, and bankers were making a killing, and every banker I knew had literally a $2,000 suit on, a $10,000 watch. I mean, every guy I knew was wearing that stuff. I had none of that. So I couldn't compete. Like, I didn't have that. I couldn't do that. So I literally went into the sales pitch. I'm a big Doctor Who fan, also big geek. I'm giving myself a geek, right? So I literally had a big floppy leather hat, a long scarf, a long coat, slacks, and boots. And I went like that, realizing that they couldn't put me in the class. So I was like over here somewhere.
you were a time traveler.
There we go. Exactly
You were
right.
just popping out
So
all
I
over
was
the
just
place.
over here. So they were like, I guess he's like some genius trainer guy.
Right.
Maybe he's the nutty professor or something, I guess. Because I knew that if I showed up in my, today's man suit and my $20 watch, I wasn't getting the gig. So I had to do what I would pull myself out. But my class did show up at one point. I'm raised in the South Bronx in Long Island, right? Suffolk County. One guy was saying how he went on vacation. I never forget this, on vacation. I said, great, where'd you go? He said, Vail. And I said, where? And he said, you're not one of us. He knew immediately that I wasn't one of us. But I said, where? Like I didn't immediately recognize what Vail. For these who don't know, Vail is a skiing place that
was made famous by Gerald Ford.
Yes,
actually.
a lot of wealthy bankers will. Wealthy people.
That's the only reason I know about
Yes,
it.
they will often go there. So, but I didn't know that immediately. I didn't mean to go. Of course, Vail. I was there 4 times last week. Right? I wasn't able to say that, and I could tell he treated me differently immediately upon that. It
and
changed everything.
that absolutely still happens, but it's harder and harder to enforce that because people recognize the world is more wide open.
Absolutely.
And, and this is, I wish in American politics we could talk about, how much of life is, how much of it is just dumb luck and how much of it is effort. And it's always a combination
Always
of
a
things.
combo.
And, Bernie and a lot of the Democrats want to say, it doesn't matter. You can be the most brilliant person. And if you're growing up in the South Bronx, you're finished because the system will crush you.
Right.
Or, and then Republicans, Donald Trump Jr. thinks that he, unlike Hunter Biden, he earned every bit of it.
Of course he did.
It doesn't matter who his father is, et cetera.
irrelevant.
And it's like, we need to have a kind of more, nuanced understanding of like, what kind of society do we build? What does it look like where more people have more choices to actualize and maximize themselves?
Absolutely. All right. I do want to grab a couple off the internet. Guys on the phone, thank you so much. I will get you in 1 second, but we do have a couple internet questions if I could. Let's see if I can grab it. Let's see. This one is, the Democratic Party is killing themselves. Bernie Venezuela Sanders is not a Democrat. He is a Democratic socialist. They allow Bernie to let Bernie in and let Bernie take over the agenda.
What I like about Bernie Sanders, there's two things. One is that he's really good on drug war issues.
That's true.
And he's very good on foreign policy. Not quite at Tulsi Gabbard levels, but he's like, I don't, he won't rule out invading countries, but he's much more peaceful than almost anybody else. But the real thing I like about him in general, and it's partly he's a Brooklyn guy, and he can't rinse that off no matter how many years he's covering himself in Ben and Jerry's ice cream in Vermont. But he is a challenge as profound as Trump was to the Republican Party, to the Democratic Party, because he's not a Democrat.
Yeah.
And I'm not into like burn it all down at this point, but Sanders is showing in a way that Trump did as well, and Ron Paul did before this, that these houses, these castles of Republicans and Democrats are actually made of paper mache.
Yes.
And that all it takes is somebody with the guts to kind of punch through the walls, and they're going to fall apart. And so in that sense, I like Bernie as a model, or as in a general shape. I don't like his specifics, but I think the energy that he is bringing to politics is good. And he, going back to
he's
talking
also a
about
true believer.
The Overton window type stuff, he is changing. He's reset the parameters. Politics, national politics is always about the 40-yard lines between but where that is, that field is changing. Yeah.
Well, then you brought up Tulsi. I mean, there's in the libertarian world, recently Tulsi was thought to be endorsed by Gary Johnson, but obviously we found out later through Reason Magazine.
Right,
Awesome, thank you so much. Is it Robert who did it?
I think Robbie Suave is the one who called up or got in touch with the Gary Johnson campaign, and Gary Johnson made it. Well, it's a weird thing because he said, I didn't endorse Tulsi Gabbard. He likes her a lot, especially about foreign policy. But he's a Bill Weld guy all the way, which is kind of complicated because the last time I checked, Bill Weld is not an LP.
That is correct.
Running. I mean, he's running against Donald Trump as a Republican, but he did clarify that.
So, I mean, this is an issue. You find a lot of libertarians who do find darlings who aren't libertarians, right? We did it in 2016, right? Gary Johnson was a libertarian. Bill Weld wasn't, and we brought Bill Weld aboard, right?
Yeah.
I think you see people talking about it now. Tulsi, Yang, Amash, right? These are three people who aren't libertarians, right? But a lot of libertarians say, I like these three. They should come aboard.
I do think that Justin Amash is a small L libertarian. He's obviously not an LP member. He's become an independent, had been a Republican. When he first showed up on the national scene, he called himself, and I consider this a weasel word or a weasel term, but constitutional conservative. People like Rand Paul will use that. Ron Paul would. Thomas Massey of Kentucky. Amash now calls himself a libertarian without hesitation, and I think he is, but I see your point. I think with somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, what is good about her, she's not going to win the nomination. What she's doing within the Democratic Party, and it's really important because the Democratic Party, as much, if not more than the Republican Party, is the interventionist party. And she is forcing the Democratic Party to really deal with that, and she can talk about it in a way that is forceful because she is a veteran. And unlike Pete Buttigieg, she is not a globalist in that bad sense of the word.
Right.
Like, Pete Buttigieg still believes in the idea that the American military is a force for good always, and, et cetera. And he'll say, oh, this was bad or that was bad. But he's kind of a true believer in America as like the Globo cop and keeping order in the world.
He's also a naval intelligence officer.
Yeah.
Right. It's different, right? Buttigieg is a naval intelligence officer. And Tulsi, while an officer now, was also enlisted.
Yep.
And she was watching, soldiers and Marines come into the tent without arms and legs. She was watching them come in bloodied up and torn to pieces.
It is amazing that, here we are so late into the 21st century. I mean, it's 20% of it's gone already. And we have had an entire, 20 years of totally disastrous foreign policy. And it's sad that it's taking this long, but I'm glad that we're having this conversation, which in many ways was kicked off by Ron Paul in 2008.
Yes.
to say, you know what, we need a real reboot of, we don't just need to bring in, it's not the 5th season of a sitcom and we're going to bring in an adorable adopted kid to freshen the script.
Yes.
No, we need to shut down and reboot everything.
I like the idea that Tulsi could, I hope, if Democrats were more like Tulsi, Democrats would be a better party.
Yeah.
Right? If they were more like her, they'd be a better party.
Having said that, she is terrible on almost every other issue and economic issues and things like that. Awful.
But they'd be better Democrats.
Yeah,
they're still Democrats.
Yeah.
They're still Democrats, right? Yeah. But if I've got to decide what my Democratic Party of America is going to look like, I'd rather it look like Tulsi than look like Bernie.
Yeah.
If I've got to choose what it looks like, I'm going to pick it to look like Tulsi than instead of looking like Bernie. That's for sure, right? I think that's an issue. But I'm selfish here. I want them all to come to us.
Yeah.
All of them. But it's BYOP. Bring your own press. That's what it is. If you can bring press, because this goes back to what Max was talking about, right? Max was talking about, well, there's so many libertarian candidates who are running. Why do we want to bring these other people in? It's going to hurt them.
Right.
I think the opposite. I mean, if these people who are not libertarians, who are more mainstreamers, decide to come to the convention and press comes, well, then the press sees all the other libertarians who are more homegrown, who aren't doing as well, who aren't making as much money, who aren't as well known, and now they have to show up and do their dance. Now you might say, but Larry, these guys aren't ready. Then they're not ready to run for president then, right? When the press shows up, I hope they do. I hope they all come, and I hope they bring tons of press. I hope our homegrown libertarians can knock it out of the park and make some noise and show some true value.
Can I ask you just a procedural question? The Libertarian Convention is in May. Mm-hmm. I guess most of the Democratic race will mostly be settled.
Yeah, it'll be settled.
Then.
So will the Republicans.
The Republican Party is pretty much locked down at this point.
There's 2 people who are running who I think are seeing how well they do in a couple to decide if they make the leap or not.
Okay.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah, this is, the timing works to the benefit.
Correct.
To me, and you would have a better understanding of this having been within the party structure, it seems to me kind of a mistake to have the Libertarian presidential candidate, announced in May, and then you've got a couple of months before the election or a few months, but you're introducing yourself plus trying to get into other things. And it's just asking too much of people who are going to be marginal to begin with. But I guess what you're saying here.
I'm not that concerned because in reality, it happened with me, right? I didn't get the nomination for the governor until April of 2018. I started running August of 2017.
Right.
I'd raised half my money already. I was already there.
Yeah.
I became a shoo-in because I was the only guy who actually had a team who was having press. I had a press reel that I showed at the convention. Here's what we've already done.
Right.
So what I would want our candidates to be doing, which I think to Max's point, they are trying, right? Our candidates who are homegrown are trying exactly that. They're trying to get more press. They're trying to have a press reel. They're trying to build a team out and raise money so that when they show up in May, they can say, look, I know I'm not the biggest, baddest, coolest person in the world, but I have built a team. I have raised money. Look at me. I'm valuable.
And having it then gives the opportunity, it might be a Tulsi Gabbard or somebody, or a Justin Amash who realizes he's not going to be reelected as an independent. They jump in the race and they're bringing, they wouldn't be able to do that if they had to declare as LP candidate in August of 2017.
Correct. And the other thing is if they come and they do bring press, it does something else for us. Imagine if one of our homegrown people beats a Gabbard or an Amash or a Joe Walsh or whoever decides to show up, right? What if we actually beat them? Look at the power and strength that shows other people might actually give them money.
Yeah.
I see nothing but good with them coming, right? And people say, well, then we'll give some bad person a nomination. Well, we've done that in the past already, so we might do it again. It's true. But I hope the party has become mature enough. I hope that it will actually give the right person the nomination and look, the trial by fire is important for us. I did it and I can talk the talk because I've already walked the walk. I sat there and I got my ass kicked by the press. So you know what? You got to get out there and you got to go do it. So that's my 2 cents. Anyway, I want to get back to the phones if I can. I'm going to head over to Florida. We're going to deal with Eric. We're going to talk about corporatism. We're going to grab Eric from Florida. Eric, are you there?
Yes.
How are you, sir? Talk to me.
Oh, I'm good. Hello, Larry. I had a question. I'll cut to the chase. I have my own ideas here, but I really admire yours and Nick's eloquence and knowledge.
Okay.
So my question is kind of twofold here. I think a lot of us encounter it. A lot of people on the left like to kind of call corporations a direct result of capitalism, and also like to contend that America is at least a predominantly capitalist society. Both of those assertions are things I disagree with for multiple reasons. I was hoping to get both of your takes on that.
Well, I think the corporation piece is obvious. That was a government construct. I think that's so. I think you're totally right on the corporate place. The corporations were government constructs. They were basically the way that a government would create a monopoly or get its cut or create chits for banks or whatever the case may be. I think that part's obvious. I don't think that's true necessarily now as much. I think now people use corporations more for tax and liability issues. I mean, I've had over the course of my professional career, my business career, probably since about 98. Maybe I've been in business. I probably had 10 different corporations, entities, LLCs, S corps for things that I've purchased and bought and changed and shipped. That I still right now think I own 3. So
You're
think
part of the problem.
I am. I'm a bad guy. It's true. I think it began from government. That's true. But my gut would say that right now corporations are probably mostly used for the individual to try to protect themselves from government.
I do think, there is the day of like the East India Company,
sure,
or
exactly.
where a corporation was given a monopoly grant on trade or economic activity in a particular area, and that's problematic. We're not talking about that now, and I think there is this goes back to an earlier conversation tonight about corporatism is problematic if certain companies get certain privileges that nobody else gets. They're able to buy favors. They're able to buy market share or keep competitors out and regulate, conjure certain regulations that mean, nobody can really kind of attack their market share or market position. And we need to fight against that. And I think libertarians, this is one of the things that I'm actually proud of the libertarian movement. It has articulated a wide critique of that sort of economic activity, and you call it rent-seeking or public choice economics, which talks about how the government ends up creating acts in its own self-interest or actors within the government by making contracts or writing laws in that help certain companies and block other ones out. And I think we do a good job in talking about the problems with that. And that you see this in certain areas like, taxi cabs versus ride-sharing companies is a recent example where, cab companies are completely a function of government licensing and regulation, and they fought hammer and tong to keep things like Uber and Lyft out.
Yep.
And, and now, I mean, almost immediately, the moment that Uber and Lyft gained some market share, they immediately would go to city councils, and in places like Virginia, they would go to the state capitol and say, hey, we understand your concerns. We really do need regulation. Let's get together and make sure that ride sharing is as safe as this or that. And
so no one else can get in.
Yeah, we need to be need to be fighting that all the time. And that's something where I think in some level we can make common cause with people on the left and people on the right, because the essence of good capitalism, I think, or of a liberal society, a libertarian society, is that power is decentralized, and that everybody has to commit to a kind of fair marketplace, and you might get your ass kicked in it. And that's actually kind of a beautiful thing when you get people to say, I'm going to go head to head with you in the marketplace rather than in the smoke-filled room where we're going to write regulations saying that there's no way your company is getting part of this market.
I agree. But I think, though, that the other change that's happened recently is the small company goal now, right? Most people don't know this, but you go back 30, 40, 50, 60 years, the average person started an LLC or an S Corp or whatever it is, or business or a sole proprietorship because they wanted to begin to grow themselves, build something big, retain a legacy, create something. Not anymore. Now people do it just so they can get bought out or become a monopoly, right? It's all about becoming that that oligarchy, duopoly, monopoly, or being bought by one of them.
Well,
right? That's the
and
goal.
this is, that's particularly true in places like the pharmaceutical industry,
Yes.
which is heavily rule bound. And, going back to the modern version of the FDA, which started in the late 50s and early 60s, there were like 6 or 7 major pharmaceutical companies. They wrote the laws that said this is good pharmaceutical company standards, gave them to the government, and the exact companies have changed, but it's about the same number. And now if you're a small, pharmaceutical company, all you can do is just show something as promised and they get bought out.
Absolutely, get bought out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's problematic.
So, Eric, did I answer your question, Eric, or no?
The first one, yes. You
Okay.
seemed a bit iffy when I posited the idea that America was not indeed predominantly capitalist. Do you disagree with that?
No. I think that's a tough one to be forward with you because, as I mentioned earlier in the program, 1 out of 7 Americans works for the government, and those who don't work for the government heavily use, government looking for government contracts. So I don't know. I don't think it's. I think this. I don't have enough data to back this up. I'm going to give you my gut. My gut is it might be 50-50 because there are a lot of people who are really under the government's yoke in some way, shape, or form, and many people who are, I guess, working for and with government. So maybe a lot of people have socialized medicine. A lot of people have socialized disability, socialized entitlements, so benefits. I don't know. I think it could be hard, but I do see something happening, though, as a way to fight it. And I think the individual and the gig economy, I think that is a pushback towards that. I think we are making the shift back. It's the only way for the youth to grow. It's the only way for poor communities to grow. Otherwise, they get trapped in a government financial prison. So I don't know the answer to your second question. My gut tells me close to 50-50, but I don't really know.
Fair enough.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank
I
you very
appreciate
much.
it. All righty. Have a good night.
Have a good one.
All right. Let me grab another call if I could. I'm going to grab Sean from Long Island. He's talking about recession. That's a sad. We're going to end on a downer?
Yeah,
I'm not
I
so
don't
happy
know.
about that. All right, Sean, how are you?
Good.
You might want to turn me down in the background.
Good. Do you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right.
Hold on.
Is this better?
Hold on. Is that us or is that him? Okay, that's him. Okay. Can you gotta turn me down in the background and we're good. Go ahead.
Okay, we're good now?
Yep.
Perfect. Good. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about this coming recession.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I assumed we'd have a recession earlier. I really did. I assumed we would. I thought it was time to have a recession. I assumed it would happen. But I just think that the Fed has been pumping so much money into the economy since 2008 that I think it just keeps pumping money into the economy. And I think that's what's holding us up. That's my gut is what I think. The reason is just cyclically, we're supposed to have another one. I mean, that's what kind of supposed to happen. But it hasn't. And I think the difference is, wow, are we spending money? Our deficit after deficit after deficit after deficit, I think is what's saving us, right? And you have a bunch of people now who are saying, well, it doesn't matter, right? It's American debt. It's our debt. Who cares what our deficit is? Who cares what our debt is? We just owe ourselves.
We only owe it to ourselves.
Yeah,
and
we owe it to ourselves. Who cares?
I went to college in the first half of the 80s, and I took a couple of economics classes, and people were still trotting that out from the older kind of iteration of Keynesianism. And it was like, yeah, that didn't fly, right. in the really bad recessions in the early 80s. And it's kind of disturbing to hear that exact logic coming back, or modern monetary theory saying as long as the U.S., as long as the dollar is the world's currency, we can just keep printing our way out of this. There will be a recession at some point. What is interesting, too, is that macroeconomic theory, and I think a lot of economists would all agree with this, is that the theories predicted, first off, they predicted a faster recovery from the 2008, financial crisis. That wasn't true. They also predict we should be having massive inflation by now, and it's not quite showing up in the way that people are talking about. And we should have had a recession. I mean, we're in a record-long expansion.
That's right, yes.
But it's at a minor, it's at a smaller level.
It is, that's
and
true.
it took longer, partly because of all the things that were done in order, both under Bush and then Obama, to save the economy or prop it up. So we're in kind of terra incognita here. I think there will be a downturn, and the real question for me about that is not when it happens or if it will happen. How do we respond? Because we already have heard people saying,
"You can't."
Oh, thank God for the way that first Bush and then Obama, saved the economy, kept it from becoming a depression by flooding the zone with so much money and policies that are still in place where we're paying banks to hold money, and giving them, and it's just
can't do any more.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
I'm very, let's just say it's going to be interesting. And, for those of us who are long in Bitcoin and gold and, fillings or something like that,
Yes.
I guess maybe we'll come out okay, but it's going to be creepy.
I am a
when it
Bitcoin
happens.
Litecoin guy. I am. It's true. I am.
Yeah.
But I think the issue I'm most concerned about here is when the recession comes, and it will come eventually, when it does come, I think it's going to be devastating because we never really recovered from the first one. I say this all the time. In America, outside of cities, there's been no recovery. That's why everyone's rushing to cities, right? That's why the country's going left because of urbanization more than anything else, because all the kids are running to cities. There's no opportunity outside of cities. Well, I'm exaggerating. There's limited opportunity outside of cities. 20 cities in this country are responsible for over 75% of all new jobs. Huge. 82% of all Americans live in urban centers. So they're all rushing to cities. There's been no recovery. When this next recession hits, oh my God, what are they going to do? What's going to happen? It's going to be horrible. My gut tells me if we have another recession, the amount of people who are going to go on some form of UBI, massive, and they're never going to come off because the system is not made to help them off. The system is made to imprison them. So we're basically going to imprison a bunch more Americans, either financially or physically, as they do illegal things in black market to survive. So I think the next recession will end up with massive imprisonment. That's what happened the last time.
I'll add to that. I think you may see a serious outflow of people from the United States because this is, one of the things that I think both Donald Trump in his way and Bernie Sanders and a number of the Democrats are zeroing in on is, that America isn't the hegemon. It's not the biggest dog on the block anymore. And the world is moving in other places, and there's more growth and there's more opportunity all over the world. And it's not necessarily a nice lifestyle or anything, but possibility. And when this ship starts to sink, people are, we can't keep people in. They're going to go. They're going to go to Africa. They're going to go to Asia. They're going to go to South America,
Eastern Europe.
Yeah,
Eastern Europe, absolutely. Good. So did I answer your question, my friend?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, my friend. Thank you so much. Guys, I want to ask real fast, where can people get a hold of you?
I go to reason.com is the greatest place to catch all sorts of my stuff, but also other people at Reason Magazine, which was founded in 1968. We have we put up 2 to 5 videos a week. We have 3 podcasts a week, basically. There's a lot of stuff there and a great set of archives. Similar to your policy, library, we've got, over 50 years, over half a century of, free minds and free market type thinking about every possible issue from politics to culture to economics.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming aboard today. This was an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Guys, I want to say thank you for listening. For those of you on the phone, I apologize. I couldn't get to everybody. For those of you who printed out, I will try to respond to you today or tomorrow. I'll get back to all of you. I always do. I love you so much. I want to say thank you so much for being with me this week, and I will talk to you all next week right here on The Sharpe Way.